Hey, guess what? It's Thursday again, and this is Real Monsters. And I'm so tired. I don't want to do the show. I mean, I do,
Yeah.
but you know,
There, how's that?
good. We're going,
Hey.
Wes. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem.
And also joining us is Kelly Evans.
Oh, good evening, good morning,
Hope
whatever
you
it is.
guys went to the bathroom because I'm not stopping the car.
Are we there yet?
We just started.
uh,
So I did a thing this the other day. Um, and I thought I would share a picture. I don't often take a selfie, but for the first time in about over 3 years, I shaved. I shaved my beard off, and so I thought I would share a picture of what I look like now without my beard, and that'll be coming up any moment now. Thank you, lag time.
Put the anticipation building.
Oh my word, this is so slow. There we go.
yeah, there you
And
go.
that's what I look like without the beard.
Slob,
Very exciting.
debonair,
Exciting.
snarky.
And then we'll follow that up with M of the Week before we get into the guts of achy fakey art, fakey breaky art.
That's right. Puns are so fun.
It's you know there didn't used to be the same amount of lag time, and it really kind of bugs me.
Aw.
Yeah, one of M's favorite things to do is to look sad. The other is to sleep.
Those are some more, yeah, those are some pretty mournful eyes.
It and it works for her. It's very effective.
I can imagine. She probably got you trained well.
Yep, quite well. All right, so where are we gonna start? Today we're talking about art forgeries.
We
Kelly,
are.
what are we doing?
I think I want to start with a story because all good shows start with a story. So we'll start with Once Upon a Time. There was an artist who wasn't getting aware in life. He wasn't getting any jobs. He was struggling to make his way, same as all artists are.
Hmm.
He found that he could actually put his skills to use in making fake Greek and Roman antiquities. So
Oh,
these were pretty. This was in like I don't know, we'll say the Middle Ages. And
oh,
these
okay.
type of items were very, very popular amongst the wealthy citizens of Rome. But you can imagine you can't really find a lot of them kicking around anymore unless you happen to dig one up someplace. So there were very few genuine artifacts that survived more than a millennium. So so this guy decided that while he was under the employ of the powerful Medici family, he was asked by a rival sculptor to help him make a statue that looked like it had been buried and rediscovered. He said yes. So they made the statue. They rubbed the statue in acidic soil to age it, and it actually looked old. It actually looked like an old Roman statue. Um, it was so good, so much that the Cardinal Raffaello Riaro, oh, I can't this name, Raffaello Riaro of San Giorgio, he actually bought it and displayed it. But
Hmm.
then he decided he figured that he realized he'd been tricked. He decided not to
Uh-oh.
press charges. He was a nice guy because the forgery was just so good, and the art, the artistic quality to the forgery was so good that he said the artist deserved to get away with it. Now the artist that was yeah
That's an interesting attitude.
the, uh, the artist that we're talking about is actually Michelangelo. So this was years before he became
Oh,
successful.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, he was an art forger.
Well, there you go.
well.
The show is
That
single,
kind of gets into a central plank of all this too,
and it's
is how we value stuff.
well,
You
it's
know?
and it's been going on for ages.
Yeah, it's not new,
Yeah.
is it?
Well, I mean, how we actually value the painting, sculpture, or what have you. Think about had the cardinal never found out that it was fake, he would have still been happy.
Yeah.
A lot like the placebo effect, it seems.
Well, there's actually we'll go through like we're going to go through want to sort of go through what okay, so that was the story, and then we're going to do sort of what is a forgery, what does it mean, how are forgers doing the stuff that they're doing, and then we're going to go through some of my favorites. There's one in particular that I can't wait to get to, and then we'll also discuss like how do you detect a fake and what sort of technology is used, and yeah, that's pretty much what I'd like to do,
Okay.
Cool.
guys.
Yeah, no problem there.
Okay, my cat's decided to join me, so you may hear some noise. I don't have the heart. I have the heart to throw him out of my office. So, what is an art fake? It sounds like a fairly straightforward question, and we were talking about this earlier. It's actually it's presented by one artist as being done by another artist. So whether you're faking something that was done 1,000 years ago or faking something that was done yesterday, it's all still art forgery. There's no time limit to any of the forgeries. And it's not necessarily a crime. Legally speaking, only written documents can be forged. So you can have a fake painting, which is perfectly legal, but if it has a forged statement of authenticity, which is why a lot of artists used to work with partners who did these, then
That's fraud.
yeah,
Yeah.
legal part. Yeah. So art fake, art forgery, they're kind of the same thing. They can be used interchangeably. But there's another weird. I was looking up, just watching documentaries and researching, and I found out there's psychological studies that have revealed that when the human brain knows that they're looking at a forgery, at a neurological level, it affects the way we look at it. So if you're looking at something that you know is authentic,
Mm-hmm.
and then you look at something that you know isn't, that you've been actually told is a fake, your brain reacts. Like your brain does react to it. It's just the weirdest thing.
Well, there's a discussion of this in I can't I can't remember the book I'm sorry which book it was, but there was a case of some Roman columns or something like that, or a statue that experts were brought in to authenticate, that a museum wanted to acquire. And the experts would walk into the room, and their first reaction was, "Ooh, no!" But then they had to spend, weeks proving their initial reaction, and that's because of, the unconscious would pick up on, mountains of evidence from experience,
Mm-hmm.
and the only way it could convey to the conscious mind was no, there's something
Yeah,
wrong here.
that's actually one of the when we get to how fakes are detected. It's actually very much science versus the trained eye. And I think I sent you there's a particular family in, I think they're in Paris, who are responsible for Manet paintings. And even if something is scientifically proven, there was there was a version of what's the TV show called, Fake or Fortune, and someone had a Manet, and they scientifically they proved that this was a Manet, like absolutely no questions. But this one particular organization just said no. Like, just they took a look at it and just said, and it's crazy the way the art world works. But we'll get into that when we get into how you detect a fake.
Okay.
So there's a lot of different versions of. So depending on who you talk to, you're going to get a different story about how they do it. But what everybody agrees on is that you have to be a damn fine artist in your own right in order to be able to even attempt any one of these. It's so. According to, there's a forger named David Stein, and he says the first thing you have to know is know intimately the artist that you are imitating, not only to know him, but also to like him and to love his art. You go into the soul and mind of the artist. It's like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde thing. You become someone else. When I painted a Matisse, I became Matisse. When I painted a Chagall, I was Chagall. When I painted a Picasso, I was Picasso. So there's a lot of not only just the talent, but the actual psychological getting into the head of this, whoever it is that you're forging.
That's interesting, because art as a whole, no matter what kind it is, I think that's the best way to improve yourself, is to borrow from your favorites, whether it's writing or painting.
There was a famous author who would hand copy the works of famous authors to learn how to write.
Oh wow, yeah, that's actually one of the writing tips that you get in some classes. If you like Jane Austen, then try and write something in the style of Jane Austen. Just don't try to sell it as a Jane Austen.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
There's an interesting story from our friend Mr. Stein. I'm going to read it just because it's how he managed to do one of his forgeries. So he said, I remember one day when I opened a gallery out of my apartment on Park Avenue, I had an appointment there at 1 o'clock to deliver 3 Chagall watercolors that were not yet painted. I got up at 6 in the morning. The first thing I did was make some tea. I used Lipton tea. It's the best to use when you want to age drawing paper. It gives it a yellowish appearance when you dip cotton in the tea and spread it over the paper. Then, while the paper was drying, I made the sketches. I decided on circus scenes. I was working mostly from illustrations from books. One by one, I painted them. I finished by 11 o'clock. When one was finished, I would put it in front of a sun lamp, which makes the material, dries the material and cracks it slightly. It's like cooking. So then he rushed down to the framing place 3 blocks away, told them it was an urgent. They framed the 3 watercolors while he waited. Everything was ready by noon. He then ran 6 blocks back to a place on Lexington Avenue to make photographs of the watercolors, rushed back to his apartment and made certificates of authentication. He knows Chagall's writing, so he wrote, I, Marc Chagall, certify that this watercolor is original. He signed Chagall's name on the back of the photograph. Within a few minutes, he was finished. Within a few minutes of the dealer arriving, he was satisfied and gave me a check for $10,500.
Wow.
So that's
Jeez.
that's process. That's just like I read that. I thought that's crazy. It's just
That's
yeah, it's so
working under
mad.
pressure.
Yeah, seriously, it's a lot of running around when you're an art forger. But then you get all kinds of other people. There's someone said, just as no one can play the violin in imitation of a master unless you first learn to play it rather well. So the whole thing comes back to, you do have to have talent. You do have to have some skill. You do definitely have to have training. I think everybody we're going to talk about tonight actually did go to art school of some. These people aren't just amateurs who just pick up a brush and think, oh, you know what, I'm going to paint a Vermeer today. They actually.
I would never start there.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like I admire them, but they actually do put a lot of work into what they do. But as we'll see, the payout is, if you don't get caught, the payout is enormous, like just huge.
So,
Um,
which
If
brings up a question that I had is we last week we talked about theft being like $1 billion a year business. Is forgery on that same scale? Is it more? Is it less?
I think at some point it might have been more. And then we talked about this, and I was thinking about it. But now that, like like maybe 40 or 50 years ago, or even 100 years ago, but now that we've got so much science behind proving that things are frauds, I don't think it's worth it as much anymore.
Hmm.
Plus, the drugs and the crime lords and stuff that's grown over the last couple of decades as well, which same thing, the money follows.
It doesn't take
if
any talent to
people
steal.
wanted to see, yeah, I was just thinking about this too. If people want to see a bit about a real art forger, a documentary about them, go check out Orson Welles' F for Fake.
Yeah.
Um, it's really interesting, well done. It's his last movie too that he ever created. Um,
I got that coming
but
up here.
we're not going to be talking about the forger in that one, though. I don't think, right, Kelly?
Which forger is the movie about?
Uh, trying to remember his name. He's the Hungarian artist.
I don't think we are. No. And now it's going to bug me now. I have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the same.
There it is, finally. Holy cow, what a lag.
I can start talking about my favorite if you're looking up
Yeah.
the page.
Sure.
Okay, so my favorite art forger of all time was a guy called Han van. Um, I have trouble with his last name. Me Meegeren. It's a Dutch name. So Han van Meegeren. He was again. He went to art school like everybody else. He was actually really really talented, but he kind of liked doing sort of old fashioned type stuff, like Dutch Golden Age stuff. That was his main, that he liked that the most. Art critics decided his work was tired and derivative at the time that he was doing this stuff. The Cubists were doing their work and the Surrealists, and that was all sort of like the rage. So they didn't really like Van McGarren's work, but he still was really, really good. So he decided that because the art critics had sort of basically trashed his work and told him he wasn't very good, he was going to show them by doing some fakes in the style of some very, very famous artists and see if he could get away with it. And basically, he did. He stuck to 17th century artists, the people that he really liked. And one of them was Johann Vermeer, who we just mentioned. For those who don't know, and I don't want to talk down to anybody, but Vermeer painted the girl with the pearl earring, so that's one of his most famous paintings.
Yeah, that's
But
a way most people would know Vermeer these
yeah,
days because there was a movie.
there was a book, there was a movie. I'm sure there's if you see the memes, there's like a million memes of her. They're hilarious.
Hmm.
Elmire de Hori
Oh, did I hope
is the. Yeah,
we can
that's who's the movie.
we can mention Dehori because it's funny because he's one of the only art. Okay, so he's an art forger, but he's also got his work being forged. So it's interesting.
Ow, turnabout.
Yeah, so he had a partner. I guess yeah, he worked with a partner. And I don't think he's alive anymore, but the partner is, and the partner says every once in a while he'll see one of the faked ones. Yeah, it's crazy. So he got so good that people were actually faking him. Yeah, if you want to talk a little bit about him, definitely, yeah.
So can I? Um, is there a distinction between somebody who replicates a known painting versus creates one in the artist's style from scratch? You know what I mean?
That is what art forgery is. You're painting something in the artist's style and then selling it as by the artist. Because you can't paint the Mona Lisa and say, oh, here's another copy of the Mona Lisa, because there's already one. Is that what you mean?
Right, right. But so
Mhm.
there's no real market for like lost paintings being forged or anything
Oh,
like that.
I see what you mean. Those, yeah, that's a really tricky area, and you would get yourself on the suspicious list really quickly if all of a sudden you started coming up with lost paintings.
Okay.
Um, Having said that, it might be something to look into for next week,
Hold on, I
actually.
gotta change my eBay listing.
No, it's mostly like, for example, with Van McGarren, he painted something called Christ with the Adulteress. And what he did during World War II is he actually traded Hermann Goering 137 paintings for this one false Vermeer called Christ with the Adulteress. I
It's
think I
coming
sent
up.
you. Did I send you a copy? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's got these 137 paintings and he trades it. And Goring loves it. It's one of his most prized possessions. Like, it's hanging on his wall in Pride of Place. And it was one of his absolute favorite paintings. And of course, he didn't realize it was a fake. He thought it was a Vermeer because the Nazis kind of like older, more traditional artists. He was in love with this thing. And when it all started coming down, and we'll go through this next week, and the Nazis started storing all the art in salt mines and copper mines and stuff,
Right.
he stored that one away. He wanted that one back after it was all over. Um,
I'm always laughing when a Nazi gets metaphorically, or for that matter, literally kicked in the balls.
I
So,
think that's probably why I like this guy the most. I guess there must be part of it. Like, there must be some part of my brain that's going, yeah, good. um,
stick it to the system.
so basically, what happened was, it all came out. Van McGarren actually got charged. They actually believed that the 137 painting. No, they actually believed that his painting, the fake Vermeer, was real. And they accused him of working with the Nazis, collaboration with the Nazis,
Oh,
because they were giving
Wow.
he was giving them Dutch art, and he shouldn't have been doing that. That was really so. So the penalty with that was, like, there was a death penalty for
yikes.
collaboration with the Nazis. So he had a choice. He had to either, he could just say no, or he could confess to being an art
Forger.
forger. So, so
Wow.
what
Wow.
confessed to the less serious charge of forgery, but they didn't believe him. So they made him paint another picture in the style of Vermeer while they all watched him. Like the police commissioner and all that kind of stuff watched him. And then after he had done this second piece of art, they went, oh, okay, then we believe you.
Oh man.
In fact, he actually said that he was sort of considered a hero because he actually managed to rescue these 137 paintings from the Nazis.
Okay.
So
Wow.
yeah, so not only did he kind of stick it to Goering, he actually did rescue over 100 paintings.
Wow. Excellent.
So
He's
it's
a hero.
yeah, well, he's an interesting character. He It's estimated that he duped buyers out of about $30 million. That's in 1957 money, so I don't know what that would turn.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
That's back when
including
a million
Wow.
dollars was a lot of money.
uh, including the government of the Netherlands.
Did
Yeah.
he ever do jail time?
I think he did. I'm just looking through my notes. He got less than a year. I think he maybe got like 6 months or something.
Ah,
Hmm.
that's
Um,
6 months for 30 mil. That's pretty good trade.
but the other thing is, this is what he did, and this is basically how he got caught. There was actually another episode of that Faker Fortune I mentioned. It's well worth a watch. It's a fascinating show. Um, but they actually discovered one of his fakes on the show. So he bought authentic 17th century canvases. He mixed his own paints from raw materials such as lapis lazuli, white lead, and indigo and cinnabar, using old formulas to ensure they would pass as
Mm-hmm.
authentic.
Mm-hmm.
In that, he made his own badger hair paintbrushes, similar to the ones that Vermeer used. He came up with a scheme of using bakelite. It's a type of formaldehyde to cause the paint to harden after application, making them appear as if they were 300 years old. After completing a painting, he would bake the painting at about 212 Fahrenheit, and then that would be to harden the paint. And then he would roll over it with a cylinder to increase the cracks, and then he would wash it in Black India ink to fill in the cracks to make it look like it didn't, age 300 years. So it took him about 6 years to work out this technique, but once he hit on it, man, yeah, he made quite a bit of money on that. But he did the Fake or Fortune episode where they had a painting. I think they thought it was a Vermeer. They also figured out it was him because of the bakelite, because they were aware that he used this stuff.
Oh,
Hmm.
interesting.
But yeah, he's got to be my favorite.
I was just thinking where you said that forging itself is not illegal, but it's the fraud that is. It's a lot like cannibalism. Cannibalism technically isn't illegal, but killing somebody to do it
Oh, right, yeah,
Right.
is a problem.
that's very weird.
Yeah.
Does it matter, legally speaking, does it matter if you fake the signature on a painting or leave it
Nope.
unsigned?
No, no, it's still not. It's still perfectly legal. It's only illegal if you get a document forged saying it's real.
Now, does that have to do with copyright at all?
That is a good question, and I don't know. I don't think it has anything to do with copyright.
Huh.
Because otherwise it would be the forging the painting, not the forging the document, I would have thought.
Hmm.
Yeah.
There's so many vagaries
And
in
copyright's
copyright law.
copyright's pretty new law,
Yeah, I was thinking as well.
as
And,
far as history goes.
yeah, and look at how many people release, and I don't think anybody gets sued for that. So I think that's, I guess, depending on, I guess it's like documents. Maybe it's public domain if it's a certain, if it's a certain age. As far as faking it goes, I'm not sure, but I do know that certain museums and galleries do own copyrights on, for example, if you want to use a picture of the Mona Lisa on your cover of your book that you're writing, you do have to either get permission or pay to use it. So some images, depending on who owns them and depending on the museum and et cetera, are actually still subject to copyright. Yeah, I know, because I tried to use an image from a Swiss museum and it got real complicated.
Oh,
Very interesting.
That was fun. Are we good so far? I know we ran over a little bit last week, so I don't want that to happen. But should I go through?
yeah. Who's next?
Let's do how to detect fakes.
Who?
How do we detect a fake?
Oh, okay.
Because it's gone
You call the
crazy.
FBI. Dun dun dun.
This is
Right?
what last week about all those.
I gotta put that awful logo up. That's why I said that.
Oh, we don't need to see that. We don't need to see that. How about the picture of the Mona Lisa with all those X-rays?
Oh, okay.
That's kind of a cool one. So there are so many ways that that's just awful.
Isn't that awful? Isn't that terrible?
I'm going to design a new one on Photoshop and send it to them. I wonder if they use it. Because that is just, I don't know. I get that they want to put all little art pictures and famous art and stuff in the background, but seriously, there's too much going on here. Oh, there we go. There's our Mona Lisa. Talk about her last week. Okay, so I'll discuss what we're seeing on the screen in a second, but basically there's so many ways to detect fakes, and now that science has come in leaps and bounds, especially over the last decade or so, it's getting more and more difficult for fakes to actually be made, like modern fakes. What they are finding is a lot of the older things that they thought were legitimate and had been actually verified as legitimate by experts in museums. They're finding out through all the new technology that quite a lot of those are fakes. In fact, it's estimated that about 20% of art hanging in galleries these days is actually a fake.
Wow,
Wow.
that's a huge number.
I think that's a bit on the high side, but it's like up to 20%. I think that might be just the uh, shock you with information in this article, but it just says there are a lot of them. So basically, these days, what happens is actually we can connect it in with a story. There's a Da Vinci painting called the Salvator Mundi, and it was sold to I think it was the Abu Dhabi Louvre, and they bought it from Christie's in 2017 for $450.3 million, and it was
Hold on.
yeah.
Say that number again.
$450.3 million in 2017.
450
Jeez.
Point three. Don't forget the point
point
three.
3 million.
Yeah. This story is great. I love this story. I've been keeping track of it, and so far nothing's happened. But anyway, um, they did some restoration on it, and it was supposed to be unveiled on the 18th of September 2018. But for some reason, a few days before it was supposed to be unveiled, the museum said, no, we're going to just postpone it. And they didn't give any reasons whatsoever. And there's been no further announcement. So I don't know what's happened. No one knows why they canceled this large unveiling. Now, there's a bit of a kerfuffle in the art world about whether this is a forgery or not. So there's a lot of stuff going on with it, and now that the Abu Dhabi Museum have it, they don't want anybody else to look at it. They won't let anybody else like do the X-rays or do the paint analysis or anything like that.
Nothing suspicious there.
Yeah, so it's very difficult to know what's going on. But if they were to take a look at it, if someone, a professional like the Courtauld Institute, for example, in England, is a specialist in actually analyzing paintings, so they'll look at the paint application technique. Was the paint put on with a brush? Was it put on with a palette knife versus a brush? Was it layered on? How many layers? You know, he went crazy with his layers, like more layers than anybody else on the planet would put on a painting, and Da Vinci did it. So that's one of the things that we know. It's one of his pieces of art. Were they paint strokes thick or thin? Paint strokes in the way a painting is painted is almost like a fingerprint for the artist.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one.
Hmm.
Yeah.
They do look at the autograph and the signature, so that is important. It doesn't make it illegal if you sign, if it's a fake painting and you sign Chagall's name on it, but they do look at it because, again, the autograph and the way it's painted and the brushstrokes, you can prove whether it's real or not. Attribution is an absolutely huge thing right now. If you cannot prove the history of the painting virtually back to the original painter in their studio, then if you've got any gap at all in that, even 300 and 400 and 500-year-old paintings, then you've got a potential issue. Because at any point where you don't have information, a fake could have been put in.
Right.
So that's very important.
Hmm.
So there's also on the back of the painting, there's stamps.
Seems like there would be a market for filling in those gaps.
I'm sure that there probably is, yeah. Again, but yeah, that's all part of the forging. Yeah, if you
Yeah.
want, well, people will come up with a fake painting and just forge the entire attribution. So it's crazy. You've also got logos and things on the back of the painting. There's stamps from canvas suppliers, stamps from framers.
Oh, yeah.
A lot of people use the same framers, like Monet used the same framers for most of his frames, and they all have exactly the same stamp on the back. So, and you can some these suppliers change the logo, so you can tell whether it's like pre-1920 when they changed the logo or post, that kind of thing. So, but we were talking earlier about science versus the trained eye. There's still a lot that a trained eye can do. People have studied, say someone studied Da Vinci for 30 or 40 years. They are going to know Da Vinci backwards and forwards. At least you would have thought. Otherwise, it would be a huge waste of 40 years.
Still might be.
Yeah, I think I might be getting this number wrong, but I think there are actually only 20 Da Vinci paintings in existence. So whenever anything new comes up, like this Salvator Mundi, it's always like, oh, okay, we got to be instantly suspicious of this, and let's do some tests. And oh, you won't let us do the test? Okay, well, that's unfortunate. So basically, yeah, brushstrokes are like the handwriting, but the trained eye is going to see the signature use of color, the complementary colors, the stylistic sort of things that are
Hmm.
intangible and you can't really measure with a microscope. They actually also take paintings to handwriting analysis experts to check the signatures. Like they
Oh,
go,
okay.
and then this is where it gets fun. So this is the Mona Lisa in front of us. They X-ray the heck out of these things, and they run them through so many different types of light filters. So I'm just gonna. So basically, you've got infrared, you've got ultraviolet, you've got the X-rays. So I think in the one we've got in front of us, the one at the bottom middle is that's one of the X-rays, and the one that's red, I think the blue one is ultraviolet, and the red one is infrared. But whatever it is, you can tell in each of them something different. So if you look at the one that's very, very blue, you can see little blue dots, and then something that looks like a little blue thing stabbing her in the head. Those are all uh, corrections people have made. So repairs
Yeah.
people have made in
Oh,
the past.
repairs. Okay.
Yeah, repairs. They're not, yeah. And there's just, you can see the black and white one up in the top right corner. While she looks a little bit chubby most of the time, you can actually see that her arm is quite thin and she's actually got a veil flowing behind her. And that's not usually visible in the original painting. So there's a lot more you can actually see here. One of the most fascinating things you can also see is something called a pentimenti, which is basically the artist when painting, they don't usually just get the final product down on the first try. They might
Hmm.
like one of his fingers. He's drawn them in different ways until he finally gets the right way they should be, and you can see this under like when you X-ray them. So the fact that something has pentimenti, forgers wouldn't do this. When you're copying something in the style, you don't generally put in a deliberate mistakes.
Right.
And when real painters are doing this stuff, especially the older stuff, you find a lot more of these pentamentis because they haven't solidified the idea until like the very last couple of layers.
What about the reusing canvases?
That is, yeah, that's done a lot as well. And that's where you get into issues with was it done in a particular artist's studio? So it may not have been done by him, but it might have been done by one of his apprentices.
Hmm.
And they were known to reuse canvases all the time. In fact, I think a few years ago, maybe 10, 15 years ago, I think they found like an original Da Vinci, but it had been painted over by one of his students, and they only found it because
Mhm.
they x-rayed it and did all the x-raying and stuff, and they saw, perpendicular to the painting, you could see there was another image under there. But yeah, it's often done.
Less than 20, according to the
Oh,
Encyclopedia Britannica.
okay, I wasn't far off then.
That's still a thing?
Yeah, yep, on the web.
Oh,
Okay.
online now. Let's see. The last thing is chemical analysis of paint. They will actually take a teeny tiny bit of the paint off of the surface of the painting and run it through all sorts of analysis to figure out whether it's a modern paint, whether it's an old paint. And then quite often they know from real paintings which different types of white the artist would use, so they can compare the white to the fake, and see whether it's the same white. And it's all very, very technical.
What about carbon dating? Is that a thing in paintings?
No.
It's not. They're not old enough, are they?
Carbon dating is for biological things, not
Well,
um,
they carbon date rocks,
Well, that
minerals.
would,
other.
couldn't they carbon date the, what's it called, vellum, if that's what it's painted on?
Um,
I just
Um, maybe,
maybe it's just too new for carbon
it's
dating.
possibly too new. Yeah, I've never heard of carbon dating used for paintings. But then, why would you need to with all this now that you can actually
Yeah.
do spectral analysis of microscopic bits of the red that they used? And it's crazy.
mhm, very true.
But yeah, there's with all of this going on now. Having said that, not everybody can afford to do this, and that's when we get into the cost of forgeries. it will, a lot of smaller museums, there's no way they can afford this. This is expensive stuff. Like in the more in-depth analysis you want to get into when you get out the x-ray machines and stuff like that, that costs an awful lot of money. People have to be paid, the technology has to be paid for, the time, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
It's like anything. So there are quite a few of the smaller museums that if they get a forgery, fraud and forgery, sorry. If they get it, what they think is a forgery or someone accuses them of having a forgery, a lot of the time they'll just have to put it away and either not show it or, hang it up and maybe say, oh, we think this is a forgery. We're not sure. But most of the time what they'll do is they'll store them away because they just can't afford to prove one way or the other. And there's no point in having it hanging up if there's questions surrounding it.
So, how big of a factor in, the admission of forgeries is just plain embarrassment, right? Oh, crap, we just spent all this money on a forgery. Like in, you know,
Hmm.
It doesn't
$450 million maybe.
Yeah, it doesn't happen. Well, you're right. It doesn't happen very often because no one wants to admit they did something wrong. No one wants to admit, look like an idiot, really. And I know
Right.
that's harsh. But they're just, yeah, if you can afford 450 million for a painting, surely you can afford a little bit more to get it tested before you buy it. But having said that, Christie's themselves said this painting was authentic and pointed to some of the stuff that we just went through, including the pentimenti. There's evidence in this Salvator Mundi painting that the hand was moved a number of times, which is something Leonardo did. So yeah, it's there is an interesting. Actually, I'm going to jump forward. One of my other favorite guys. So most of these people do it for money. I think we agree on that. They don't really do it out
Right.
of the contents of their hearts because they make a heck of a lot of money. I'm just going through. So there's a guy called Eric Hebborn, and he ended up. Let's see. He ended up making more than $30 million from his forgeries. There's another guy called John Maya, 200 forgeries he reckons he did. He earned about 25 million euros. I'm gonna have to do the math on that one. But that's I think it's about 40 or $50 million. So like these people do make a lot of money from them. But there's this one guy called Mark Landis. He was born in Virginia. His basically his father was they moved around a lot. I think his father was in the U.S. Navy, and he grew up in like the Philippines and Hong Kong and London and France and Brussels and all over the place. So finally they returned to the United States, and Landis went to let's see he was diagnosed with schizophrenia after his father died. Not that that really makes a difference, but I don't know, it might. Um, so keep it in mind for what we're gonna say. So Landis again went to art school, the Art Institute of Chicago, and he actually then got a job working on the maintenance of damaged paintings, which basically got him into contact with a lot of art dealers and art galleries and things like that. So basically, he wanted to. His father had passed away, and he wanted to have like this fantastic painting in memory of his father. So he donated. So he did this painting by a famous artist called Maynard Dixon, and he gave it to a California museum as an original. He didn't say he did it, but he gave it to the museum. He didn't. It was a donation,
Okay.
and so he kept doing this for 20 years. He kept painting famous, but emulating famous paintings, forging famous paintings for 20 years, and then he gave them to more than 50 museums. Did not charge them a penny. Did not take anything. They were all gifts, and because they were gifts, none of the museums thought to check whether they were fakes or not. Because why would someone?
All right.
Why would you do that? Um,
Hmm.
the other funny thing about him is he dressed up in like different. He had different scenarios when he was actually giving these things to the art. So one of the aliases he had was Father Arthur Scott, a Jesuit priest. So he actually put on a full smock with a priest outfit when he was donating the painting. Um,
That
so
would be suspicious.
I thought that, yeah.
Yeah.
but
The
he would
church
make up
doesn't give art
Oh
away.
boy.
well, he would do that. He also used the aliases like Stephen Gardner. Let's see. He was Father Arthur Scott, but he was also Father James Brantley, so he was two priests. Um, he just used a whole bunch of other names and stuff. And he just, I love the idea of him dressing up as a priest. And he used to make up the wildest stories, like, like someone in the family died and they left this painting and he didn't want to get rid of it, but he needed the money for surgery for his mom. And, he would just make up the most outlandish stories. And again, no one thought anything of it. Here's a poor priest giving us, a heartbreaking story, and he's donating this painting in memory of this person who's died. We're not going to test it to see if it's fake. Um, so eventually he donated he donated another a painting, and he said it's in memory of the loss of my mother. The director asked the registrar to check out the painting, and when they actually put it under ultraviolet lights, it kind of glowed very strangely. Um, it also showed sort of a dot matrix painting, hinting that it was a photocopy of the original, which then projected onto a board
Wow.
and then painted over. Um, so that's how he got caught, just because one museum director got a little bit suspicious. Now I don't know, I haven't been able to figure out what was so well, maybe the fact that he was dressed as Father Arthur Scott and donated a painting, maybe the whole thing was just suspicious, like you said. But yeah, basically
Uh,
he never got any time. He didn't actually break any laws at all.
He didn't take anything, so yeah.
He didn't, yeah, he didn't take any tax deductions for the work donated. He didn't sell it to them. He gave it to them. He actually also addressed his donations to specialists at the museums who he knew would have the expertise to prove him wrong, and none of them did.
Wow, that's just totally daring him to stop him.
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
Having said that, the damage, there's now a bunch of museums that have all these fake paintings, and even though they were given, and there's still the damage to reputation, because you're going to feel pretty foolish. And when you get a damage to reputation, then that has a knock-on effect for a museum. Like when I used to work at the Victoria and Albert Museum, there was a little issue with some constable paintings, and I think it took the museum quite a long time to get over that whole thing.
Yeah, I
Right,
didn't
and
think of
and
that.
yeah, what about the reputation to the people who were to the people, not just the museum, but the
Oh yeah,
people at the museum? I mean, that's got to be tough to have on your resume.
yeah. And the other kind of thing is, so for example, I worked for one of the people that was involved in this, and every year, every few years, you got to get a whole new crop of employees like me coming in, and then you learn this little secret, so it never really goes away.
Mm.
But he was not fired for it. There's the weird thing about people not really being fired for this, because it's all done in good faith. It's not like they use their best knowledge at the time, and if it comes out later that it's phony, then they're not really held responsible. But yeah, from a reputation thing, that's got to hurt, and really big time.
Yeah,
Wow. Yep.
but with such a high percentage, you'd think it would. A lot of people are getting burned by this stuff.
Well, they used to be. So for
Yeah.
example, so let's go to Van Gogh. Okay, so when Van Gogh died, he had his brother and his sister-in-law left to hold on to all his paintings, and his brother died. And then it was just left to the sister-in-law. She was really, really shrewd, like really clever woman. What she did was she built up the reputation by releasing one or two paintings at a time, and then people would see them, and she'd put them in galleries, like well-known galleries, and she'd lend them to exhibitions so that more and more people got to see them. So she'd kind of generate buzz, and then she'd say, okay, here's another two for sale, or here's another three for sale a couple of months later or a year later. So by the time she was older and all the paintings were out there, they were making quite a lot of money. I mean, it was after he died, which is unfortunate, but she did a huge amount in really promoting him and getting his paintings recognized and worth a lot of money. But the problem is, while she was doing this, fakes were being entered as well. Fakes were being sold.
Oh,
So now, this was, when was this? 18, well over 100 years later. What we're finding is not only do we have the original ones, but we also have a bunch of fakes that no one knew about. So now that everybody's kind of playing catch up with, is this fake or not? Because at the time, thought it was. So, they bought it maybe 50, 60, 70 years ago, or it was donated by someone in good
right,
faith.
right.
And now they're stuck with a forgery they didn't know they had. So it's very, very,
That'd
very,
make an excellent game show.
yeah.
Is this
Fake or
fake?
forged?
Yeah.
Like I said, that British show, if you can see it, I think it might be on Netflix or Prime. I can never remember. But it's called Fake or Fortune. And basically what happens is they get a tip about a painting, or someone will write to them about a painting or something like this. And they'll get the person in, they'll look at the painting, or they'll go visit it, because sometimes it's churches, sometimes it's, Parliament buildings, whatever. And the one guy is an art, like he owns his own art sort of gallery. He's a dealer. And the other woman she's been a journalist for eons. They both actually work on the Antiques Roadshow, if that makes anybody feel any better. So basically, they take a look at this painting and they try and decide whether it's a fake or is it worth, a fortune. And they're the ones that will actually. So BBC is the one, I think, splitting the cost for. Let's send it to these people. Let's send it to these people. Let's get this sort, this done. This kind of a scan. Let's. Send it to the Courtauld Institute and that kind of thing. And then at the end of the day, they get some sort of pronouncement on whether it's so within one show. So it's all nicely packaged up into an hour. You get some sort of, is it yes or no? But it's through that show that I've learned so much about the forgery stuff, because they go into it in great detail.
Wow.
And it's also like a little mystery, and, get your glass of wine, put your feet up. Oh, is it going to be real this week? Ooh, it's very exciting.
I'm going to have to check it out.
It is actually a really good show. Let me see. I've got two more, but I only only have time probably to do one more.
Who are we gonna do?
What are we gonna do? Let me see who made the most money. Then that'll be good. Or who? Oh no! Wait a minute. This is okay. Let's do Eric Hebborn, because he had an interesting end. He was born in London in 1934, and according to his biography, his mother beat him constantly as a child. He did not have a good childhood. At 8, he set fire to his school. He was sent to Longmore Reformatory. So he's a bit of a lad. And anyway, he teachers at the Reformatory encouraged his painting talent. So he obviously had some sort of natural painting talent. And he got connected to an art club, and he first exhibited at age 15. So he kept doing art again, like everybody else. He's done an art degrees, and he's actually got awards. He got the British Prix de Rome in engraving. He got a 2-year scholarship to the British School at Rome. So he had talent, definitely. He became friends with a lot of people. Unfortunately, he became friends with Soviet spy Sir Anthony Blunt in 1960.
Oh.
Who told him that a couple of his paintings look like Poisson, who's another painter. So he thought, oh, looks like a real famous painter. Maybe I can do something like this. So he moved back to London, and he was hired by, again, another one that was hired by an art restorer. So here he is, he's restoring art, brings him even closer to the world he's gonna copy, and it also brings him into contact with all kinds of dealers and things like that. So.
Sorry to interrupt, but wouldn't restoration kind of train you a little bit in a particular style, because you need to make it, the repairs fit in?
Yep, you're right, absolutely. So it's just if you're going to be a forger, this is the perfect path for you. Like, seriously.
Yeah.
But then at that point, they don't know you're going to be a forger, so they can't really,
Right.
to ask you on an interview question or something.
Will
So
you try to forge Da Vinci?
seriously, what are
No.
you planning on using with the education we're going to give you? So basically, he went from restoring paintings to just what he called restoring paintings on blank canvas, so that they could be sold for money. So he basically started forging. He and his lover, Graham David Smith, apparently were antiquers. They used to go, hit every antique shop going. So they made all kinds of connections there. Plus, they were able to get a lot of supplies and stuff. Plus, they were able to see some, a lot of paintings and stuff. It's where um, he fell in love with prints that one particular shop had, and some of these prints he had some really really old paper. So he started studying paper and how to use paper and stuff like that. So his first attempt at sort of really good forgeries were actually drawings on paper because he was so comfortable with the paper at that time. But eventually he moved on to more um, old masters and more painting and more canvases and stuff like that. And let's see, his paintings were sold for tens of thousands of pounds through art auction houses, including Christie's and Sotheby's. So he's that good that he actually tricked them.
Wow,
Um,
Wow.
that's impressive.
so there was a curator in the National Gallery of Art in Washington, and he was looking at one of the paintings they got from him. Uh, oh, actually, sorry, a drawing, and he noticed that there was already a drawing in the collection that looked like it was drawn on exactly the same paper. So he went and compared the two, and it was like, yeah, these two drawings are the exact same kind of paper. That's kind of weird. So he started investigating more because he thought this is kind of weird. It's really crazy. And then they found
So you
another.
wouldn't expect that to be the exact same kind of paper?
You would, but you wouldn't. Like if you had a giant sheet and you folded it into four pieces, each of those pieces is going to look like it came from a single sheet. Whereas if you have another sheet of paper that you do into four, so now you've got eight pieces, one from one pile and one from the other, there's going to be differences in them.
Okay.
Whereas there's going to be more similarities if you have a large piece. And what they used to do in paper shops, like for people who wanted to paint or draw, is they used to have like just large rolls of paper. So you just get a huge roll of paper and tear it off, and you'd be able to tell because that type of paper would have similarities from a different roll. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Just
Yeah.
just the way the paper's made. So basically, this guy thought this is weird, so he starts investigating it, and that's basically how he got caught. But he was he actually he did a little bit of time. He estimates he did about 500 more drawings. He made more than $30 million on this, so very profitable. He also wrote a book on how to do this.
Wow.
It's called the Art Forger's Handbook.
Wow,
Um,
that's impressive.
I'm
yeah,
That's
gonna
bold.
have to get that. Not
yeah,
that I want to get into forging art, but it would look good in my collection.
yeah. I'm kind of thinking I might need to get that as well. um,
Mm.
he had all kinds of claims. He wrote a biography in 1991 called "Drawn to Trouble." So you can see by the picture he looks a little bit like a lad. But basically, right after the publication of the Art Forger's Handbook, he was found lying in a street in Rome, having suffered from massive head trauma, possibly delivered by a blunt instrument.
Ooh,
Wow.
He died 3 days later. So it seems to me like he might have pissed off the wrong person.
maybe so. Or it could
Maybe
have
some,
just been
So
a
they
random
didn't
mugging.
catch
or yeah,
anyone.
it just seems I don't know. Or it could have been another art forger who didn't like the fact that he published this book.
Giving away the
They're
secrets.
both out there.
Wow.
So that's pretty much, other than random thoughts about how long this has been going on for. So Michelangelo did it. That's, it goes back as far as that. But what came to me is that probably the oldest one, and I don't want to be sacrilegious, is relics. So during the
Oh, yeah.
Crusades, all of these knights came back with pieces of the True Cross. There are literally millions of pieces of the True Cross. As well, there are saints' bones, there's saints' hairs, and there's still churches all over the country that have pieces of these. And there can't possibly have been, that many of Saint Edmund's teeth. Like, how many teeth did the guy have? So some of them had to be fake. So I
He
think,
was actually an alligator, so
well,
yeah.
okay, that's exactly. Okay.
Oh,
But it just made me think that the oldest relics have got to be whoever was selling them to these people in the Middle East.
Shroud of
Uh,
Turin.
oh, that's a that I think that is a big practical joke, and I love it.
Yeah,
That one has been debunked, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
yeah, I know what I mean. I think someone was playing a huge practical joke, and it took us like 500 years to figure it out, and that is awesome.
That's
Yeah,
a
in Roman Catholicism, you can't have a church without a saint's relic to go under the altar.
Oh, right, okay.
So, yeah,
so there's
technically
a
every
big
church
market
has one.
for magic bones.
Well, the market is drastically shrinking as people flee the church,
True.
perhaps justifiably with how they've handled all these sex abuse allegations.
And how many new cathedrals go up anyway? Like
Yeah.
Almost
yeah,
none. Yeah.
yeah. So they probably don't need any at all. But yeah, I thought about it the other day, and I was thinking, oh wow, okay, that's kind of cool. I should mention that.
I wonder if the Orthodox Church does something similar. They might.
I don't know.
I'm getting a sense no, but I don't know why I think that. So I'd have to look it up. I don't know. It'd be interesting. But yeah,
Mhm.
there's potentially when you're going and touching a saint's bone, you're basically the oldest Rickroll on the planet, right?
Yeah,
Hmm.
pretty
Speak,
much.
speaking of which, I Rickrolled a friend the other day, and she doesn't even know it. I'm just wondering if she'll
Uh,
know what I did. But anyway, moving on. Eddie, that's pretty much everybody I've got. Like I said, Van Meegeren, there's all kinds of YouTube documentaries and stuff about him. So I definitely recommend having another look, just because he he gave it to the Nazis. And Mark Landis also, just because he dressed as a Jesuit priest and gave away his paintings. And I think
That's
I don't know,
that's
that's
pretty funny.
yeah.
Kept him out of
yeah, and
jail
then
though, didn't it?
the guy from Orson Welles' movie.
And Orson Welles,
Um,
and Faker Fortune. I definitely recommend that. It's so good. But yeah, I'm gonna.
yeah.
I've seen that Orson Welles movie, so I'm definitely going to be putting that on my list.
So
I
Kelly and
think
I,
that's the only one he did that was more or less a documentary.
Right.
Hmm.
before the show, Kelly and I were discussing. We had talked about just briefly mentioning the Hitler diaries,
Yeah.
but after looking into it, it was decided that needs a whole show.
Yeah, I think so.
That is a
Definitely.
big story and a very intricate story that starts with a plane crash at the end of World War II and leads up to great fraud.
Just wondering whether you could do it in 1 week and not two. It's just they're so convoluted.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff going on. Well, boys and girls, that's pretty much all I got. I mean, I could keep going on. There's a bunch of other people I know. I think I sent a couple of other pictures, but
Yeah.
conscious of the time. There are so many. There are basically the pure masters. There's probably about maybe five of them. Like, and we're talking like the ones that we've already gone through, especially. Well, not Michelangelo, but the Van Meegeren and stuff. They're the true masters of it, and they all seem to have things in common. They all went to art school. They all like to paint their own style, but they're kind of derided by other people, and they all really have a sense of vengeance. They really want to stick it to the people that actually told them that their work wasn't any good. It seems to be the three top things that they all have in common.
Hmm.
That and being incredibly talented. I'm not, and again, it sounds like I'm idolizing them, but oh god, they really are talented.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it really does take a massive amount of skill and dedication to do things. And
Hmm.
being a painter is hugely expensive.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
Yep,
Especially,
it is.
especially if you're like our friend who the Van Meegeren again. He actually like bought lapis lazuli so that he could make his own paint. I mean, come on, that's crazy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even if you're not a forger, if you're just
Yeah,
using
yeah,
modern materials, it's still massively expensive.
yeah.
And if you gotta feed that habit somehow.
Yeah, I tend to get new paintbrushes like every 10 years or so because I'm so cheap and I actually use them until they literally start wearing off and leaving hairs in my
Hmm.
work. I just, but yeah, last Christmas I got on my wish list, I got what I wanted, some really beautiful brushes. So,
I
but yeah,
think the key there is proper cleaning to preserve them.
yeah, the other key is don't buy cheap stuff to start off with.
Yeah.
Very
I
important.
do, but I don't do enough to
Uh,
warrant spending money on brushes. I'm more of a pencil guy.
oh,
Okay.
I was gonna say coloring books don't count, Barrett. uh,
Oh
Finger
boy.
paintings.
I got myself some very, very nice Japanese ink brushes, and I took a Japanese ink course, and
Ooh.
they're so nice to hold, and they're so nice to paint with, and the lines come out beautifully. And anyway, yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
yeah.
if you don't shut me up, I'll be here forever. So
Shut up, Kelly.
okay,
Next week, we have Kelly once again
once
for
again,
episode 3 of Art Crimes, and we're going to talk about the real baddies,
yeah, this
Nazis.
this one's gonna be.
yep.
We're gonna have to tread a fine line here, I think.
Yeah, it's not a funny subject here. There's really nothing. There are some positives, but it's not a light subject.
No, it's not. So I have to be careful with that one. But anyway, yeah, that's going to be an interesting one because I don't think people know just how much they did and why they did it. Like I think people have a vague understanding that they did actually steal some art, but just the enormity of what they did.
Yeah,
Yeah,
industrial
probably
scale
skewed by
theft.
Yeah,
monuments, man.
I might have to go watch that again.
Yeah,
Hmm.
It's so much better than the book. Don't I'm not saying like I'm not recommending the book, but the book is a little bit dry. If you like troop movements and all that kind of stuff, then yeah, it's your thing. But it's not as light and sort of character driven as the movie.
Hmm.
okay, there you go. Everybody
Okay,
go study up for next week.
there will.
There'll be a there will be a quiz.
Yes.
All
uh,
right, good night.
good
Thanks,
night.
guys.